nice hours. We were waiting for people to get on.
All right, fellas, ladies, children of all ages, we are back in the studio. Well, I say we are back. Do not fret. Do not jump off. I'm not the most boring person in professional fishing, but my co-host is absent tonight. He has a good excuse. He has a little club derby called Red Crest that he's getting ready for, which is, when does it start, Tyler? Does it start next Friday? Is your mic on? People can hear you?
I think it starts this week.
It starts Thursday. It starts Thursday.
It starts Thursday.
Yep, it starts Thursday. So, first of all, best of luck to Smoke as he preps to make a run at another Red Crest. Now, I want y'all to share this show, and here's why. Because I'm going to be doing this solo tonight, but I've got a lot of really cool things to talk about. And yes, forward-facing sonar is one of them. Surprise, surprise. I've got some stories I want to tell from the first two elite tournaments about forward-facing sonar. Some you may have heard, some you may haven't. Pretty crazy stories, though, I must say. But I got them right here in my notes. So I want you to share this, and I want you to engage when we get into that conversation, because I want to hear y'all's thoughts on these stories and kind of what went down and, your thoughts on the whole subject. Obviously, everybody's got their opinion. It's all over social media, all over the internet as of late. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So real quick, shout out to Angler's Choice Marine, presenting sponsor of the show. Angler's Choice Marine, they have 3 locations. They have one in Martinsville, Virginia. They have one in Lexington, North Carolina, and they have one in Spindale, North Carolina. So if you're in the market for a new boat, Ranger, Nitro, Triton, any White River Marine brand, new pontoon maybe for the ladies, check them out. They got a lot of great deals, especially on any leftovers. They still have big rebates, Bass Pro gift cards, all kinds of incentives right now. So check them out. You can find them online, Angler's Choice Marine, or you can just swing by one of their 3 locations. So on top of that, Bass Pro Shops actually has their Spring Fishing Classic going on right now. Did you know that, Tyler?
I did. It's been all over my Facebook page.
Yeah. Well, that means the pros are doing their job by getting the word out there. But one cool thing, I mentioned this the other day on a video that I cut there in the shop when I was prepping for the Classic, talking about the Spring Fishing Classic, prepping for the Bassmaster Classic, talking about the Spring Fishing Classic, was that they have a rod and reel trade-in incentive right now where you take an old rod and reel, you trade it in for up to $100 off of a new combo. And the coolest thing about that is they actually rod and reel them to local children fishing organizations, which is a big deal to me personally. Those kids, a lot of those kids, they may never even get access to a fishing rod or even get to experience the joys of fishing that we all have, and it could change their life, truly. But anyway, just one of the cool things they're doing during these Spring Fishing Classics. Any Bass Pro, any Cabela's is participating, so check those out. All right, we're going to do, before we get into the FFS stuff, I'm going to jump into a Toledo Bend wrap-up and a Lake Fork wrap-up. So if you followed the first Bassmaster Elite tournaments, gosh, beat down would be an understatement, but it was pretty ridiculous. And Lake Fork, obviously, the weights were insane. Congrats to Trey. Congrats to Fajita for his win at Toledo. Yes, the top 10, before anybody asks, or you probably already know, the top 10 in both tournaments were 100% forward-facing sonar. And before somebody says, well, I saw Trey catch one on a jig under a dock on the final day. Well, I bet a $100 bill right now he probably saw that fish on forward-facing sonar before he did. That's what people aren't understanding. That thing is effective from 1 to 50 foot of water. It's one of the most unbelievable tools that I've ever seen in professional fishing. So Toledo was a tournament where I approached from the mindset, which is hard for me to do as a veteran angler, that I was going to focus on that offshore bite. Even though the weather was starting to warm, I say if 1,000 fish rush the bank, there's still going to be 100,000 off the bank. So I tried to get into some areas where I thought the fish would be moving to stage and set up to spawn. I ended up fishing one little creek arm that I, believe it or not, I had as far as the deep bite, I had all to myself. There was a few guys that dabbled in there shallow, and there were a few guys that dabbled around the mouth of the creek a little bit. But overall, I had it pretty much to myself, and that's where I ended up catching most of my weight. I was doing the FFS deal. I was using my Active Target 2, targeting fish that were set up in timber mostly. They were set up on little creek channel swings and timber points leading into this creek, just heading back to spawn. One thing about the forward-facing sonar is if you understand fish movements and fish patterns, it's really priceless tool on locating those fish and just making you a lot more efficient. But if you have the experience and the knowledge of typical fish movements and fish patterns, then that tool can help you eliminate a lot of water very, very fast as far as water that actually not holding fish. So that was kind of a neat deal. That was really one of my first experiences where I dedicated an entire practice to looking for that bite. So I was kind of proud of myself. I didn't venture off to the shallows too much in practice. Really hardly any. I told my wife Emily, I said I was going to go down there and I was going to focus at least 90% of my practice on that bite, and that's what I did. So that was hard for me to do, believe it or not, but that's what I did. And it ended up paying off. I ended up 35th at Toledo Bend, decent start for the year. And we went on to Lake Fork, where Trey McKinney hit the 130-pound mark for 4 days. Unbelievable performance from him, 19 years old. And this kid, before anybody's quick to point out, he's 19, he won it because of FFS or this, that, and the other. I've known this kid. I hadn't known him super well, but I've known of him for about 5 years now, maybe 6 years. And the kid's been catching them since he was 10 years old. He's a very, very good shallow water power fisherman. That's really more his wheelhouse. But when he got into serious tournament angling, 4 or 5 years ago, that's when FFS kind of exploded onto the scene, and it started growing ever since. So he was able to utilize that tool to his advantage, and how he's evolved as an angler for the last 4 or 5 years, which is kind of his earliest years of high tournament level fishing. So Trey did a phenomenal job down there. But yeah, that was a very interesting tournament. I actually I kind of went old school. I sight fished the majority of that event. I did not catch a single bass during the tournament that I weighed in off my forward-facing sonar. Believe it or not, I actually sight fished shallow. I kind of did some old school bed fishing, things like that. And thought I was doing pretty good the first day when I had 25 pounds, and then I came in and I was like in 30-something place. They absolutely smashed them down there. And I think the most it had ever taken to get a check at Fork in an elite tournament was somewhere around the 18 pounds a day mark. Well, I say a check, day 3, top 50. Top 50% of the field was about 18 pounds a day. I think it ended up taking 21.25 pounds a day to make the top 50, which was unbelievable. I ended up finishing 45th in that event and had almost 63 pounds for 3 days and finished 45th. So that just goes to show you how strong of a fishery that is. As far as the quality of the fish in that lake, I'm not going to sit here and say that lake has more fish than other lakes, because I don't think it does at all. Nowhere near what Toledo Bend or Rayburn or somewhere like that has. But what the Texas Parks and Wildlife does for that lake is absolutely amazing. Obviously, that Texas Parks and Wildlife is very well funded. They have a lot of money to support the programs and the fisheries in their state, and they do a phenomenal job with it, needless to say. But multiple double digits caught in that event, and just a fun event as a whole, because, anybody that doesn't like catching 6, 7, 8, 9 pounders. I actually, the first day of practice down there, I posted it on my Facebook and Instagram, I caught a 10-pounder. I actually caught a 10-pounder running the forward-facing sonar deal. I caught it suspended on a tree. My issue with that bite in practice for me personally was I was not able to generate enough bites to feel comfortable about it. And then on the halfway through the second day of practice, I started seeing a few fish in one general area that were starting to pull up to do their thing. And on day 3, that got even better. So I decided to kind of dedicate my tournament to that, thinking the majority of the guys would be off the bank and I could compete. Well, we could compete to where we got to day 3 and we cashed us a check. But if you were doing that, you were not competing for the win. Again, all the top 10 at Lake Fork were exclusive on their forward-facing sonar program, and just all 10 of them cracked 100. Didn't all 10 of them crack 100 pounds?
Yeah, I believe all 10.
All top 10 guys at Lake Fork got a century belt, and that's pretty unheard of. I think the only time that ever happened was at Lake Falcon, Lake, back when Paul Elias actually set the record of 132 pounds over 4, or 133, whatever it was. It was more. It was a little bit more than Trey had. 132, 134 pounds, something like that. It was an amazing tournament overall, and we are now at home. I'm actually leaving tomorrow to head to Oklahoma for the Bassmaster Classic, and this is an event that I always look forward to more than any other event I've ever fished in my career. It is the pinnacle of our sport. It is the biggest show in bass fishing, and I never take one for granted. My goal is to win the tournament, and that's it. they literally don't remember who finished second except the guy who finished second, which happened to be me one year. So, and Tyler, you might remember that just because we're buddies.
I remember it quite well. I remember watching it when I was working the booth in the expo and seeing it happen, and it was quite disappointing. Not as disappointing as for you, but
yeah. Well, guys, again, gals, I want y'all to chime in here in just a little bit when we get into this discussion. And I've got some stories to tell you about forward-facing sonar and kind of my thoughts on the whole deal. But Pete, I'm very excited about the Classic coming back to Ray Roberts. You know, they announced that 2025 Bassmaster Classic is back in Texas at Lake Ray Roberts, which is where we end up finishing second. Now, that totally different tournament, totally different time of year. We were there in a unusually high water situation in June, I believe it was, because that was the year of COVID. And they moved the Classic they canceled it and rescheduled it. This time it's going to be in March, and I think it's late March. Late March on Ray Roberts, I've heard really good things about. So the little bit of research that I've done, there's some giants that swim in that lake. I don't know if it's chock full of bass, but it has giants in it. So should be an awesome tournament. There should be some really, really big fish weighed in that event. So looking forward to that. Grand Lake's going to be phenomenal. There's always a huge turnout for classics when they're in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And Grand Lake is a tournament, is a lake, is a destination that I'm very familiar with. I have fished there 6 or 8 times over my career. Got some really good finishes there. Got several top 5s there. And you know, I love how the lake sets up. Now, I understand going into this tournament, it's going to be a little bit different with the new technology, and I have to use that to my advantage and kind of take my experience from these Highland impoundments and apply the forward-facing sonar to that experience and hopefully find a happy medium somewhere where I can utilize the best and put it in my favor somehow. So, all right, let's jump into it. I've got some really I got 4 stories I'm going to tell y'all, okay? 4 stories. They're all forward-facing sonar stories. You may have heard of a couple of them if you followed the first couple Bassmaster Elite tournaments. These are just stories for food for thought, okay? I'm going to preface this whole FFS discussion by saying, you know, it is the most impressive technology I have ever used in my entire life. What I've learned about, or a lot of guys you've heard say this, what I thought I knew about bass behavior, some was true, but a lot of it's not true. Forward-facing sonar is something that you can take to your local lake, and it can teach you so much, and it can teach you so much so fast. That's what's amazing to me. It can make you not twice as efficient, but 5 times as efficient an angler as any other tool I've ever used. You know, this technology is when you're talking about live technology, it's truly amazing. And what Lowrance and their Active Target 2 has done, if you don't have one, you're falling behind fast. I can tell you that. Forward-facing sonar is it's just amazing. It's amazing what it'll teach you, what it'll show you. Watching how fish react, watching how they swim, watching how they move. It'll surprise you where some of them set up when other times you think. I tell you something I've learned real quick. This has nothing to do with bass fishing, but any of you guys like to crappie fish out there or fish crappie tournaments, I'm gonna tell you how to win those tournaments. Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now how to win a crappie tournament. Forget fishing brush piles. Forget fishing docks. Forget fishing timber. Because most of these crappie tournaments, they have a limit, right, Tyler? It's like 5 fish or 10 fish. Don't they usually have a limit?
I think so, yeah.
Y'all help me out with this, but don't crappie tournaments normally have a limit? If this only applies to those that have like a 5 fish limit or a 10 fish limit to where you're trying to catch the biggest ones in the lake. Go out to the middle of your lake. I almost don't care where it is unless it's like a super high current situation or something crazy. Maybe not the St. Lawrence River or somewhere like that. Mm-hmm. But go out. I did this at Toledo and I did this at Fort. Went out to the middle of the lake in the channel, like 40 to 60 feet at those lakes. You know, it's relative to the lake. Might be 70, 80, 90 feet, some of these lakes. And fish for single crappies with your FFS. I've seen this multiple times on multiple lakes already, and I've used bigger than, you know, a crappie jig. I'm using like a 3-inch bait on a jig head, the jig head minnow deal. Use a little bit bigger bait and target these gigantic single crappie, because I promise you, these crappies are the ones that some are the biggest in the lake. They're running out there nomadic, and like I caught like a dozen of them at Toledo, and they were all over 2 pounds. Now, a local told me that's not that impressive at Toledo Bend. Whatever, I thought it was pretty impressive. But and then I went to Fork, and I was like, I was down there near the dam, but I was out in like 55, 60 foot of water, and I kept seeing these dots out there, and they'd be isolated by themselves, and I'd fire my minnow out there and shake it, and it'd go thunk, be like a 2.5 pound crappie, and I did that like 6 times, and they were all over 2 pounds. They were all giants, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like,
did Canterbury know about this?
Well, I thought it would be better for him not to know because he's
he'd probably be very disappointed you didn't bring them back.
Yeah.
Dinner.
No, actually, I did not keep these. I threw them back, but I, against my better judgment, because I like to eat crappies every once in a while. Canterbury, we all know, loves to cook fish, and he's dang good at it. But let's jump back into some of these stories I wanted to tell y'all. So, first story is one of my personal experiences. All right, so I'm at Toledo Bend on day two. Day two, I weighed in a big bag. It was like 22, almost 23 pounds, 22 and some change. And it put me in position to make a run at the top 10 on day three. Day three, we had a terrible day. Didn't catch them, dropped down to finish 35th. We're out there fishing, and I've caught my limit. I've got a pretty good bag built, 18, 19 pounds. And I had gone by this flat, just a flat, no really changing the contours, just a flat, and it eventually came out and touched the creek channel, just a big old flat, and had a couple stumps on it. And in about 13 foot of water, there was a dot, a fish, sitting on a stump, and it was sitting about a foot off the stump. I could see it on my active target. And I fire over there with my little jig head, man, I let it go down, and I put this thing right on its nose, and I'm shaking it. It gets by it. Fish just kind of barely moves, but it doesn't really react. I'm like, all right. I fire a deep diving jerkbait out there. I jerk it right over its head. It never moves. I throw my minnow back out there again. Same reaction. Throw my minnow back out there. And at this point, I'm like, this ain't a bass. I'm not getting it. It's not moving, and it's not getting it to react. Fifth cast, counting the jerkbait. Fifth cast, I fire out there with it, and I'm shaking it. And all of a sudden, I just see that blob just light my jig head minnow up, which is within inches of its face. It has to be. And it just, boom, it hits it. And I set the hook, and I lean into it, and it's just dead weight. And I'm like, it's probably a big catfish or something, right? And it comes up and it jumps, and I'm like, well, I got the GoPro video of this, and I'll post it eventually. But I'm like, oh my God, it's a 9-pounder. Well, it ended up being about a 6 3/4 pound largemouth. Had a head of an 8 or 9 pounder, but it was super long, skinny. This fish had just spawned out. It was really poor looking. It was beat up, and it just spawned out. And that fish was sitting there on that stump recovering from the spawn. 100% it was recovering. It wasn't in a feeding mood. The fish was, like I said, it was sickly looking. It was a big bass. Of course, I was super excited to have it. Day 2, Bassmaster Elite Series. I was super excited to have it. I put that fish in a live well, and I got to thinking, for the first time in my career, I actually felt bad for the bass for a second. I felt bad. Like, honestly, Tyler, I felt bad for the bass. I was like, these suckers don't stand a chance anymore. I'm like, they can't hide anywhere. They can't not get thrown at anymore. So that's just food for thought. That's just a story.
It was literally trying to mind its own business. And you just kept hitting it in the head.
Hey, it's like a little fillet. If you hit it in the nose, it's like fishing for one on the bed. It's no different. When you hit the spot and you irritate the fish enough, it's going to bite. And that's basically what I did. I caught the fish. All right. The second FFS story, these are just experiences, FFS experiences from some of the guys on tour, is a Justin Hamner story. Justin Hamner, if anybody watched the final day at Lake Fork, he caught an 11-pounder, okay, an 11-pounder on his jerkbait. And he caught it, it was, again, just similar to the fish that I was talking about. It was suspended on a stump in that mid-depth range, I don't know, 8 to 10 foot, somewhere in there. And he made a comment that before he caught it, I think it was right before he caught it, and he said, I've seen that fish. It might have been right after he caught it. He said, I've seen that fish for 4 days straight sitting on that stump, and I haven't got it to bite yet. And he had fired at that fish multiple times every single day of the tournament, every single day. And finally, he got that fish to react to his jerkbait on day 4, caught it, and it was 11 and a half pounder. You saw the catch, I'm sure. Everybody saw the catch if they followed it. And I got to thinking about that, and I'm like, God, that's crazy. It blows my mind because stuff like that was never a possibility without the forward-facing sonar technology. That fish, obviously, he made multiple casts to it. Again, he had to make multiple presentations of this fish to get it to react. So, again, in my mind, I'm thinking, man, it's just like bed fishing, right? That fish actually, being in that depth range, could have potentially been spawning on that stump, too. That's debatable. Or it could have been getting ready to slide up. What funny part is I I was sight fishing in that pocket behind where he caught that one, and that fish could have been trying to slide up on the bed where I could have caught him, Tyler. And then Justin,
Jackie, if he'd have just left him alone, it could have been yours.
That's right. That's right. Dang it, you, Justin. No, Justin had caught it on day 4. I wasn't fishing on day 4 anyway. So that's just another story that's pretty amazing. You know, that's to me, it's just kind of mind-boggling how this technology is affecting some of these fish catches. Trey McKinney. All right, anybody that watched Trey, was this day 4? You know what I'm going to talk about.
I think I know what you're going to talk about.
Okay, so.
And I think so.
Trey is fishing.
What I think it is. It's when I
fishing just outside the mouth of a spawning pocket, close to the mouth of a creek on the lower end of Lake Fork, and he's throwing a jerk bait, throwing a jig head man, throwing multiple baits, you know, to get some of these fish to react on forward-facing sonar. And he sees one out there. He fires out there with his jerk bait, and he breaks it off. He pulls into it, breaks a fish off. Says, "How dang." Well, he made a comment on the YouTube video when I watched the replay after the event that 30 minutes later, he had been following this fish around. He's like, maybe I'll get my jerk bait back. You know, just kind of not really thinking it's going to happen. And I think he made a comment where it was 30 minutes after he broke this fish off. And he gets this fish to react again after making Lord knows how many casts at it to a jerk bait. And he catches that fish with that jerk bait sideways in its mouth, the one that he broke off. And he catches the fish with his jerk bait in the mouth and gets his other jerk bait back. And I got looking at that, and I got thinking about, you know, chasing the fish down and making that fish react the second time. Like that just, again, another amazing story from forward-facing sonar technology. Here's one more. This is my 4th and final one. Pretty amazing. This was Alex. I hope I don't butcher Alex's last name. Weatherall? Let's just stick with Weatherall. Weatherall. Alex, I don't really know Alex personally, so sorry, Alex, if I did butcher your name. But Alex, actually, this is at Toledo Bend. He breaks a fish off on the hook set off of his forward-facing sonar. This fish is swimming away from him. And 9 times out of 10, when you break a fish off, especially immediately, the fish is not really ready to bite again, you know, even on the bed and things like that. Sometimes you can get them to react pretty quick if they're spawning, but he followed this fish, chased it down after losing it, and got this fish to bite again and caught it. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was like an 8-pounder. Again, the technology and what these guys are doing with it is blowing my mind. So let that be a lesson to all you guys that are new to this FFS technology. All these experiences that we've had and we've seen, it's been it's been eye-opening for me, to say the least. All this being said, it's been really, really interesting for me to hear all the debates going on this subject lately. And I actually listened to Bass After Dark, which is with Ken Duke and my buddy Brian, and they had some of the young guns. They had, Milliken, you know, he's not necessarily a young gun, but he's in his mid-30s. He is, compared to me, he's like 34, 35. Trey McKinney and Alton Jones Jr. were on the most recent episode. It was a very interesting episode. I encourage you to watch it. And it was kind of their perspective on the whole FFS deal and things like that. And they didn't talk about this much, which I was kind of happy, because the things that I'm seeing online, you know, first of all, you know, don't ever call it cheating unless somebody's actually breaking rules. So people call it cheating. I know that's been addressed, and definitely not cheating. It's far from it. One thing people are complaining about is from the conservation aspect. Okay, another thing people are complaining about is viewership. All those things don't have enough data to support those claims yet. I'm not going to sit here and say it's bad or good or you know, we're going this way or that way, but I am going to sit here and say I think the number one question we all need to be asking ourselves is how do we want our sport to be played moving forward? Because this is much bigger than any individual. This is much bigger than my personal career. This is much bigger than, you know, a big, long debate on social media, whatever. This is about the sport of professional bass fishing. So I guess the question that we ask, and this only, and when I talk about this only pertains to the top level of our sport, not to, you know, every recreational angler out there or local tournament angler. Gosh, I encourage you to go buy you a Lowrance Active Target 2 and put it on the front deck and rock on, because I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. I mean, it is absolutely unbelievable. But at the top level of our sport, there's always been limitations in, baseball, golf, can't use this club or that ball or things like that. The difference in professional fishing is that we have electronics. Okay, we use electronic technology. We have for years, and forward-facing live technology is the biggest game changer I've ever seen as far as kind of taking the sport, taking hold of the sport. I've seen debates on social media about, well, it was like that when mapping came out, or it was like that when 2D sonar came out. No, it's not. It's not the same thing. You can't compare any of those to live sonar. You cannot, period. End of story. If you have not used and are proficient with live sonar or understand exactly what that tool does, then you can never make that comparison, because it doesn't, all these changed the way the sport was played, but technology can get to a point to where, we could have virtual reality, man. I mean, we always say, well, where can it really go? Well, 10 years ago, I would have never thought we'd be where we are today. 10 years before that, I'd have never thought we were, when we were then, and you could go on and go on and go on and go on. So it's, one thing about the viewership at the first two events, man, like, the elites were cracking giants, and that's fun to watch, like, period. Forward-facing sonar or not, I mean, I enjoyed it. Tyler, I'm sure you enjoyed it. How can you not enjoy guys catching 6, 7, 8 pounders, whether they're catching one off the bed from under a dock or out in the middle of a channel? That's just awesome, like like catching and exposing what those lakes truly have. But I want y'all's thoughts on this subject, because I think the question that we need to be focusing on has absolutely nothing to do at this point with, the effect it has on our fisheries, or the effect it has on viewership, or the effect it has on how many baits the industry's selling. I think it has, the number one thing we need to be addressing is, how do we want our sport to be played moving forward? Do we want to change the whole dynamic of how it's played? And if we do, that's fine. I am a very open-minded person. I don't try to say, I'm not going to be the guy that says, I hate forward-facing sonar, I'm not going to use it, because my career depends on it. I have to adapt to survive. The technology is amazing. It's one of the most, I've said this earlier on the show, but it's just one of the coolest tools I've ever used. So as long as it's legal, I'm using it, and I'm going to utilize it. I'm going to try to adapt, and I'm going to try to embrace it. I did that at Toledo Bend, and it paid off with a top 50. I'll be the first one to say, at 43 years old and 17 years deep into my career, I'm on that in-between phase. Well, I'm really considered a veteran now at 43. Yeah, Tyler's like, yeah, you're old. I really feel old when 19-year-old kids are whooping my butt. But that being said, I'm fighting these demons on one side and trying to force myself to really understand what I need to be focusing on the other side. But there is a happy medium there. I've heard a lot of guys that are really good with forward-facing sonar say this, and if you understand bass behavior and patterns and movements and things like that, you can use this to really to your advantage to make yourself even that much more efficient. So you can combine the old school and new school and make it work. You just have to be willing to do it. And in the meantime, that's what I'm trying to focus on moving forward. But the So, I'm seeing comments on here. So, Mike Harris said FFS is the bridge that's too far. Ryan Sowers wants to know. I'm going to start addressing some questions, and I want some engagement here, guys and gals, because I want to know y'all's thoughts on some of the stories I told, right or wrong, doesn't matter, and what y'all think the pros and cons are of the whole topic moving forward, of forward-facing sonar, and where do we go from here, Thoughts on forward-facing sonar in the back of the boat? Ryan, I will never. I saw a TikTok or YouTube or something, Instagram reel the other day, and it was this dude getting ready to get in his boaters. You've seen this, I think.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And the guy walks down to the dock, and it's the guy's co-angler. I don't know if this was staged or what. He's got a backpack on. He's got a couple rods, of course, and he's got one of those portable poles with his live transducer on the bottom of it. And of course, in his backpack is like a little, it doesn't show it, but I'm assuming it's like a little lithium battery or something like that. So he's going to get in there and look, like, if I'm out in the middle of the lake doing my forward-facing sonar thing and my co-angler brings one of those, now I don't think the tournament organizations are going to have a really tough decision because that's going to become more advanced. Those portable systems are become super advanced where co-anglers can hop into boats. Used to, they had rules where you couldn't carry GPSs and things like that as a co-angler because they didn't want you marking your pros' locations and yada 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 and sharing them with people. So the organizations are going to have to look at it from the standpoint, if we're going to be running a bunch of forward-facing sonar dominated tournaments, do we want to potentially lose a bunch of co-anglers, or do we want to just allow them to use these devices if they have them and let them bring them too? Now, the boater's argument is going to be, well, man, if I'm out in the middle of a creek channel and I'm scanning around catching suspended fish or floaters that they call them now, I'm doing figure eights out there looking for these fish, and he's catching half of the ones that I'm getting ready to throw out or catch. Again, if that's the way you choose to fish, I see both sides of that, but the co-angler doesn't have a prayer if he doesn't have one, period, in the story. Like, he doesn't. Like, the guy's more likely to zero than he is to, that's just the way it's going to be. So my thoughts on that are, that's a touchy subject right now. If I'm a co-angler and I'm signing up for a BFL and I ask my boater what he's doing and he tells me I'm going to be in the creek channel targeting suspended fish with my forward-facing sonar and my little minnow, and I've got one, I'm taking it. Like, I'm taking it. And if it's legal, I'm taking it, And, I would obviously do the gentleman-like thing and say, hey, man, I don't want to bother you or screw you up, so you let me know if I'm doing anything wrong. I'll shoot this thing out the back of the boat all day and try to make sure I fish to use water and yada, yada, yada. But that's, that'd be the right way to approach that, I think. All right. Mr. Jones, he said people will watch the coverage they want to watch and won't if they don't. Forward-facing sonar has nothing to do with it unless you're a ball sucker of Randy No Scope. We're going to have to filter that out. But
we'll leave it.
What he said. Sorry. I quoted him for word on his quote, but I think that's Mike Jones. Yeah, so I'm going to – the Toledo Bend and the Lake Fork tournaments are perfect examples of people that want to watch fishing are going to watch fishing. And when they're catching giants and it's entertaining like that, I think the proof's in the pudding. It doesn't matter how they're being caught. Now, if you're at a lake, we go to Smith Lake in like July or something like that, and it's going to be a forward-facing sonar deal, I'm sure, and we're catching pound-and-a-half spotted bass. Things like that might be, who knows? Who knows? Time will tell as far as the viewership goes. But that will be an interesting tournament, to say the least. I hear that place is going to be a challenge that time of year, and there may be a few thousand wakeboard boats running around too. So it should be interesting. All right. Bassing for bucks, let's address that. He said, tell me what the difference between catching a bass on a wacky worm, I'm assuming wacky worm is what you mean with forward-facing sonar, and catching a bass on a wacky worm without forward-facing sonar. Only difference is catching bass in different areas not normally fished. The biggest difference is there was a bass there or not. So instead of making 1,000 casts with your wacky worm a day before and catching 20 bass, now you're making 30 casts a day and catching 20 bass. So the efficiency and the fact that you don't have to waste time fan casting an area, and believe it or not, bassing for bucks, you're still fishing a lot of the same areas. You're just able to see exactly where they're at in those areas now, as opposed to saying he should be right there, but he's 10 foot to the right. Now I see him, I just fire over there where he's at. So the efficiency factor is the biggest difference. That's the factor that we're talking about here. It's used to, we had to make basically an educated guess on where we thought these fish were going to position based on our experience, our instincts, our knowledge of that fishery, of what we thought fish did when they moved from A to B to C and back and forth. Now we don't have to make an educated guess anymore. We actually see them, so we know if they're there or not. And the technology is so good now. Our target separation with active targets, phenomenal. It's really, really hard for them to hide, period. One thing that I think about a lot with this whole subject is that you're on a 20,000 acre lake, roughly like Lake Fork. Now Toledo's 180,000 acres or whatever it is. It's a monster. But the fish used to be able to hide. They used to be able to get in places that they had zero pressure. They used to be able to rest. They used to be able to go out and float, suspend. You hear about these guys talking about these fish that suspend out in the middle of the channel that they're catching. And what's crazy is these fish will be in 50 foot of water, but 10 foot below the surface. That's something that a lot of us never knew happened. Now, guys, we knew there were some out there because there were guys that used to troll back in the day, especially on a local lake here, Moss Lake, and they'd troll for hybrids out in the middle of the lake. And they'd catch giant largemouth occasionally, or big spotted bass, or giant crappie, and things like that. So we always knew they were out there. We just didn't realize how many were really out there until now. Now we know exactly how many are out there. So, I don't want to say it's like high fence deer hunting, but basically, if you have a lake, let's just say this table I'm sitting at's the lake, and this is the bank. The fish can't live out of water. He can only go to the bank and back out in the middle. Before live sonar, he could get in areas and places to where he could not be found. That no longer exists. That's, if you go to a high fence ranch in Texas that's got 5,000 acres and you're hunting specific deer, eventually you're going to catch up with that sucker. That's just the way it is. Again, it is a tool that will teach you more about what a bass does in real time and in live time than any other tool I've ever seen, and it is the most educational tool I've ever used. And I know I've said that multiple times, but it truly amazes me every time I turn it on because it teaches me something that I thought I knew, but it was really the other way around. So it really makes me feel like an idiot half the time. All right.
I got a question for you.
Tyler, you got a question?
I got a question.
All right, Tyler, you shoot it over here, then I'm going to jump back into these other questions.
It's regarding the FF forward-facing sonar. And the big debate is, or people talk about these younger guys coming up, the only reason they can catch them is because of it. And you got your veterans who are big on, not wanting to use it and whatnot. Do you think that it's more of the veteran anglers have trouble putting history behind them of how they've caught them and learning the new technology, and these younger anglers, as well as I do, someone coming in that's young, they want to learn as much as possible, and
that's right.
Just quickly grasp it because they can grasp it quicker and they're willing to.
I think willing to is you hit the nail on the head. Now, a lot of these young guys are as hungry as I've ever seen them. The other thing you have to think about is we have college fishing now. We have high school fishing. We have middle school fishing. We have college scholarships for fishing. We have an influx of so many kids now that are super tech savvy, okay, just from these devices and everything else in the world. They're very hungry. It's very competitive because there's so many tournaments with so many boats at so many different levels now. And I'm talking about these collegiate events with 300 or 400 boats, these high school events with 300 or 400 boats. And those kids, they are basically what FFS has done is it's shortened the learning curve. Okay, so it's allowed these kids to learn facts about bass behavior in a very short amount of time compared to what I had to learn over 15 or 20 years, that a lot of it actually ended up not even being 100% accurate because FFS has shown me otherwise. So I think it's shortened the learning curve. And to answer your question about the veterans of the sport and those guys, I think that there's a fine line between being just so stubborn that you're just going to go down in flames and refuse to do it, and then there's a factor out there that, I immediately said after last year that I have got to force myself to learn this technology and become proficient with it, because again, forward-facing sonar does not catch fish for you. It does not, all that's crap. Like, bottom line, it's crap. You have to be a good angler to catch fish and be competitive at the top level with forward-facing sonar or without it, period. The guys that are good with it have spent more time with it. They have dedicated more time with it. Trey McKinney said in multiple interviews that, he started seriously tournament fishing at 15, 16 years old, which is basically when FFS was available. So he's he's used that as his main tool in learning bass behavior. Well, his main tool, mine was Bassmaster magazine and Bassmaster on Bassmaster on TNN television and things like that. Which those were experiences and educated guesses and instincts and things like that looked like they were the right thing to do because these guys were winning tournaments doing it. But he's used FFS, which is a fact maker. Like it don't lie. Like so he's able to hone these skills so much quicker and more efficiently than a lot of the older guys were able to. I am not going to be the veteran that just says I refuse, I won't do it, I'm going to get my teeth kicked in, but I don't care, I'm going to fish the way I want to. Again, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, dude. It's fun to use. Like when you get out there and you say, like, I love to sight fish. First of all, let me preface this by saying I love to sight fish. I love to catch one off the bed, and anybody that knows me knows that. But when you get out there and you see one out there suspended and 10 foot down, and you fire out there on him and you jerk a jerk bait over his head or a swim bait or a minnow or whatever it is, and you watch that sucker react and he flares on it, he doesn't eat it, he fires something different out there, and you watch how he reacts to it, and he fires on it and you catch him, and I mean that's fun, dude. Like if you say that's numbers they've seen.
Hold on,
Ryan had a question. What is it?
It just went quiet. Internet.
You're joking, right? Y'all still got us?
Okay, hold on. It's back.
Okay, all right. Video paused, but it's back. That's what Ryan said. So maybe we had a little internet hiccup there. I'm going to jump back up to some questions here. I saw one here from Ryan. Said, "Do you think they'll ever limit electronics, or is there too much sponsor dollars to limit it?" You know, that's obviously one of the hot topics. I don't think the sponsor dollars need to be what's driving this. Although we all know money drives everything. Again, back to my initial statement. I feel like now, do I think that it'll happen? That's yet to be determined. But I still think the focus is bigger than the electronics companies, is bigger than the sponsor dollars, it's bigger than this is the sport as we know it. So where do we want our sport to be, and where do we want it to go? Now I'm only talking about the top level here. I'm only talking about professional fishing, the Bass Pro Tour, the Bassmaster Elite Series. Okay, it's just like any other professional sport at the top level. There has to be some kind of standard, right? So do we start now with forward-facing sonar? Do we see where it goes in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? What do we do, and how do we look at that? So I don't think, limiting electronics, here's the thing. Like, if you take away 4 of this guy's 5 live transducers, it doesn't change the way these guys are winning these tournaments and the way they're fishing. If they have 1 live transducer, it's still going to happen, isn't it? And the extra transducers, it might make them a little bit more efficient in specific situations. As of right now, I'm still the guy who's running 1 live transducer. I don't have 17 graphs on my boat. And there was guys that had 2.5 times more electronics than I had on my boat, and I was fortunate enough to outperform them in the first 2 events. So I'm not going to sit here, but here's the thing: I had a lot. Where's Jeff?
It's definitely the internet.
Well, my internet's fine. My comments and everything. It's not the internet.
We're good.
Okay, says we're back again, but I don't. Better holler at Jeff. I mean, tell him what it's doing just to see. You want to shoot him a text?
He ain't here.
He left already? Oh, well, Jeff bailed on us, so if we have another issue and it freezes, we may be done. We've frozen a couple times, but we're back. That's not Jeff, Ryan. That's Tyler. So Jeff's actually gone for the night. But I tell you what, we won't keep it rolling very much longer in case we do have an issue, because we definitely want to get this on our podcast platforms and make sure it's there for y'all to watch on YouTube later. But I want to address, a couple more questions. One from Danny Floyd. He said, "Did all of you elite pros have some sort of vote on forward-facing sonar during the off season?" We did not have a vote whether to get rid of it or keep it or anything like that. There was not that I was aware of. Now, we were called upon to get our thoughts moving forward during the off season. And another thing is Bass does have a board, a panel this year, a forward-facing sonar panel, if you will, to kind of collect data from each and every tournament. And to see kind of where we're at the end of the year. They will not make changes mid-season and things like that. I think that's a great decision by Bass. That would be that would cause confusion and where we've seen other leagues change rules and things like quite often, and all that does is piss off the fans and confuse everybody. So
and the anglers.
And the anglers, yes, I should say that too. All right, let's. I'm gonna jump back. I'm gonna jump back to a few more questions. Let's see. Scott said 4-Face Sonar has eliminated the need to get information since you're targeting roaming fish. Well, see, here's the thing about 4-Face Sonar. It's such a good tool, y'all, that you have to understand. People are getting tunnel vision about. And Scott, I'm not singling you out, but you made me want to bring this point up. People are getting tunnel vision that 4-Face Sonar is a tool that you use to go out in the deep water and target suspended fish. It absolutely is a tool for that, but it also is a tool to catch them off a bed you can't see, suspended under docks, sitting on laydowns, sitting on a stump, sitting in a piece of timber, running around in open water. I could go on and on and on. If that bass is in a foot of water or 110 foot of water, I don't care what he's doing and where he's at, 4-Face Sonar can be your best friend if you know exactly how to utilize it. So it's not just for that specific situation. All right. Bassin' for Buck says in 20 to 30 years, and I'm not going to fisherman now. Are we losing it again, Tyler?
It just now did it.
Okay.
Now it's back.
All right, guys. I'm going to start wrapping it up. We only got about 10 minutes, but I want to do our trivia question while we've got the feed so we can make sure we get a winner tonight. So trivia question tonight, again, sponsored by English Choice Marine. I appreciate y'all chiming in. We'll get this internet deal worked out. We're going to have a more detailed discussion, but I do appreciate all the questions. I apologize if I didn't get to you tonight, but again, I'm flying solo and trying to get to everybody that I can. Since the video is acting a little swirly, we're going to wrap it up here real quick. I got to go home and finish getting tied up for the Bassmaster Classic, but we're going to give away an Angler's Choice heavy-duty weigh-in bag and an Angler's Choice hat. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to ask a trivia question, okay? And then the first answer that comes through my feed correctly is the El Champion. Okay, just shoot us a message on our Facebook page with your shipping information and your name, and we'll get the bag and the hat out to you ASAP. So the trivia question, I understand the video, Skippy, but as long as y'all can hear the audio, that's the main thing. Worst case scenario, we can get it on our podcast platforms. Everybody can still hear us good out there, and the video on YouTube will just be a little whatever, So, all right, Ryan said he hadn't won a trivia in 3 years. Well, maybe this is your lucky day, Ryan. Trivia question time. This is, again, for Angler's Choice weigh bag, heavy-duty weigh bag, okay, and an Angler's Choice hat. And, again, the first answer that comes through my feed or Tyler's feed will be the champion tonight. Y'all, I can't thank you enough for jumping on tonight. I was flying solo, but I did want to talk about some of these things. Again, I don't know what the correct answer is moving forward. I just know that the most important thing is to figure out, Pete, let me finish by saying this. Pete Robbins, I think it was Pete with Bassmaster, wrote an interesting article the other day. He addressed some of the same things I was talking about the conservation and aspect of FFS and the viewership of aspect of FFS. And he said, I'm not buying all that. The main thing he was wanting to focus on is it has the potential to fundamentally change the way our sport is played and potentially undermine the integrity of the sport as a whole at the top level. He was only referring to the top level, more or less, from what I gathered. Now, that being said, that's kind of what I was speaking on tonight. That's kind of what the main focus in my mind is and should be. I don't know if there's a right answer yet, but that is definitely what we that's the big picture here. That's where we need to be, and that's what we need to be looking at. All right, here we go. I need to know at the Lake Fork Bassmaster Elite what place, okay, there's 103 elite anglers this year. What place in the tournament did 20 pounds a day get you? So 20 pounds a day, okay, 20 pounds a day. If you had 20 pounds starting the tournament, day one, you had 20 pounds on day two. What place did that land you in? That's what I need. Oh, I got it. Mr. Houston, is that the one you got? Oh, sorry. I see. The first one I got. Yep. Jerry Houston, you are correct. 64th place was just over 40 pounds. 65th was 39 and some change. So, Jerry Houston, you are the champion. 64 and some change. 40 and some change got you 64th place in the Bassmaster Elite Series at Lake Fork, which is pretty unheard of. That was a phenomenal showing. It was a big fish bonanza, whatever you want to call it. There was multiple double digits caught in practice. It was a very, very, very interesting tournament to watch, especially how it played out. Obviously it was dominated by 4 phases Sonar, but there were guys in multiple areas of the lake. It's not like all the guys were jumbled up in one creek or one specific area either. So that was pretty cool. They were spread out. Fork's not a gigantic lake, but they were spread out all over the lake. And they were catching giants. Giants, like 7, 8, 9 pounders every day, like multiples. And that's fun to watch. I don't care who you are. So, guys, gals, I thought, Ryan said he thought you meant day one total. No. There was no 40-pound bags on day one or 20 pounds a day. 20 pounds a day, Ryan. Sorry. Did I say that? I said 20 pounds a day.
I thought so.
Yeah. So if you started out with 20 pounds a day on day one and caught 20 pounds a day, or on day two, where did that put you? Ryan, you've won before. Come on, give me a break, man. Jerry, I don't know if he's ever won anything. So congrats to Jerry. Again, Jerry, Houston is the winner tonight. Send us a message on our Facebook page with your shipping information, obviously your name and all, and we'll get that bag and hat out to you ASAP. Oh, Ryan wants a trivia mulligan. Well, we don't give those on Let's Talk Fish. Sorry, Ryan. I tell you what, you'll get another shot on the next show. I promise. And who knows? We might even have a. What in the world am I kicking down here? I don't know what I'm kicking down here.
What's going on? Is that what's going on?
Yeah,
You over there kicking
maybe I
stuff?
pulled a wire loose or something, or pulled the drop cord out of the internet port over here on the wall or something like that. But guys, appreciate all the well wishes. We are getting ready to go make a run at this Bassmaster Classic thing, a little club derby next week out in Oklahoma. So hope to see everybody out there. And again, appreciate y'all's support. We can't go fishing. We'll sit right here on Tuesdays and talk fish. Appreciate it.